your uncle work?
Very good. Where does your uncle work? Where does your uncle work? And number 6,
How many kids uh, does Charlon have?
yes, how many kids does Sharon have? How many kids does Sharon have? Because this is Sharon, it's going to be she. And if you look in your grammar book, when you say she, it's going to be does.
Yes.
Okay, so how many kids does Sharon have? How many kids does Sharon have? Okay, so now let's go and do our workbook pages. Our workbook pages are page 24 and 25, and it's ask about family members. So
Mm-hmm.
this is the same thing we've been doing all along, ask about family members.
Yes.
Complete the sentences and write do or does. Now remember, when it's you, we, they, or I, we use do, and if
Yes.
it's he or she, we're going to use does.
Okay.
So number 1 is, do you work in an office?
Yes.
Do you work in an office? Number 2, Mr. Johnson stay late at work. So this is
Does.
he's.
Yes.
Does, very good. Does Mr. Johnson stay late at work? Because it's he, we're going to use does. How does Mr. Johnson stay late at work?
Mm-hmm.
Number 3, they
Mm-hmm.
send email. Do. Do they send email to their families every week? Do. Number 3 is do. Do they send email to their families every week? Number 4, he.
Does.
Does. Very good. Does he call his mother every day? Does he call his mother every day? Number 5, Benji and his wife. This is 2 people. They
Do.
do. Very good. Do Benji and his wife have a big family? Do they have a big family? Do Benji and his wife have a big family? Number 6, your brother. So this is
Does.
he. Does. Does your brother live near you? Does your brother live near you? Very
Mm-hmm.
good. Does your brother live near you? Letter B, complete the conversations. Write yes
Yes.
or no questions and short answers.
Okay.
So we're going to complete these conversations. They did number 1 for you. Does your nephew live in the United States? Yes, he does. My nephew lives here in Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2 is about your brother.
Uh, do you have a brother?
Very good. Do you have a brother? Do you have a brother? And the
No, I.
answer?
No, I don't. I have 3 sisters.
Perfect. No, I don't. I have 3 sisters. No, I don't. I have 3 sisters. And number 3, Nellie,
Uh,
that's going to be a she.
does Nelly send a package to her family in
Puerto
Puerto
Rico, Puerto
Rico?
Rico, Puerto Rico. Very good. Does does Nellie send packages to her family in Puerto Rico? Does Nellie send packages to her family in Puerto Rico? And the answer?
Yes, she does. She mails.
Yes.
She mails package to her family every month. So
Very good. Yes, she does. She mails packages to her family every month. Yes, she does. She mails packages to her family every month.
So
Number
we
4,
have to
Leandro.
say, does Nelly mail packages or
Does does Nellie send?
send?
Send. S-E-N-D. Does
Okay.
Nellie send? Or you
Okay.
could say, does she mail?
Mails. Yes.
Mail would be okay too. Yes. Does she mail packages to her family?
Okay.
Either one of those would be correct. Yes.
Okay.
Does Nellie mail packages to her family in Puerto Rico? Yes, she does. She mails packages to her family every month. Very good. Either
Yes.
one of those words would be correct. Very
Mhm.
good, Christine. I didn't say mail, I said send. But you send mail, so
Send. Yes.
either one would be correct. Yes, she
Okay.
mails packages every month. Okay, let's look at number 4. This is Leandro, so it's going to be he. So what word are we going to start with?
Does Leandro
Leandro.
live with his cousins?
Perfect. Perfect. Does Leandro live with his cousins? Does Leandro live with his cousins?
Yes, he does. Leandro lives with his cousins in Chicago.
Very good. Yes, he does. He lives with his cousins in Chicago. Yes, he does. Leandro lives with his cousins in Chicago.
Mm,
Number 5, the grandchildren and their grandparents. If you look at part B, they give you the word they want you to use for the
yeah,
verb.
visit. Yeah,
So
visit.
what is letter A?
Uh, does
The
or
do. The
do
grandchildren,
do
it's going to be do the grandchildren. Grandchildren
visit.
is kind of visit their grandparents every weekend. Very good. When you use the word grandchildren, it's like it's almost like a singular because it's not, or you could say they. It's like they. Do they visit their
Mm,
grandparents every weekend? We're talking about other people. Do they visit their grandparents? So do the
yes.
grandchildren visit their grandparents every weekend? And the answer, letter B.
Uh, no, they don't.
Very good. No, they don't.
They
They
visit
visit their grandparents once a
a
month.
month.
No, they don't. They visit their grandparents once a month.
Yes.
And number 6,
Do you and your sister uh,
yes,
keep in touch with your aunt?
very good. Do you and your sister keep in touch with your aunt? Do you and your sister keep in touch with your aunt? And the answer?
Yes, we do.
Yes, 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 we do. We keep in touch with her by phone and email. Yes, we do. We keep in touch with her by phone and email.
Yes.
Let's go over to the top of the next page, letter C. Unscramble the sentences and write the informative questions. So
Mhm.
they've given you the words they want you to use, but they're not in the proper order. So we need to write a sentence that makes sense that uses those words. It's going to be a question.
Okay.
So the first word is always going to be a question word.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you live? Where do you live?
Yes.
Number 2,
Um, how many
yes, how
you
many is the
have
question
brother
word.
and sister?
How many brothers and sisters do you
You have
have? How many brothers and
brother.
sisters do you have? How many brothers and sisters do you have?
Yes.
Okay? Number
Yes.
3,
How often uh, do you call your best friend?
perfect. How often do you call your best friend? How often do you call your best friend? And number 4,
Uh, where do you study English?
very good. Where do you study English? Where do you study English? And number 5,
Uh, when do you visit your family?
very good. When do you visit your family? When do you visit your family? When do you visit your family? Number 6,
Uh, how how do you keep in touch with your family?
very good. How do you keep in touch with your family? How do you keep in touch with your family? Very good. Part D is read the answer. So they want you to read the answer first so that you know how to ask the question. So
Mhm.
it says read the answers, then write information questions about the underlined information. So in the answer, they've underlined the information they want you to use in your question.
Okay.
So the first one, it says use which, when, where, how many, or how often. Those are the question words
Mhm.
they want you to use. So number 1, the answer says, Franco lives near the bus station. So what would be the question? Where
Where
does
does
Franco live? Where does
mhm.
Franco live? Franco lives near the bus station.
Yeah.
Number 2, they want you to read the answer first. Dorothea works at night. So what is the question?
When does
When? Very good. When does Dorothea work?
yeah.
When does Dorothea work?
Mm,
Dorothea works at night. When does Dorothea work? Dorothea works at night.
yeah. Number three. Uh,
Okay, the next one says, number 3, I have 10 cousins. So
so,
what's the question?
how many cousins do you have?
Very good. How many cousins do you have? How many cousins do you have? I have 10 cousins.
Mm-hmm.
Good. I have 10 cousins. Number 4, the answer says Jackie emails her family every day. So what's our question?
Uh, how often uh, do do
Does.
you does
Does Jackie. It's
does
Jackie does because it's she.
yes
So how often does Jackie?
email her family?
Very good. Very good. How often does Jackie email her family? How often does Jackie email her family? Jackie emails her family every day.
Mm.
Number 5, the answer is my youngest daughter, Hei Jin, lives in San Diego. My youngest daughter, Hei Jin, lives in San Diego. So what is
So
the question?
where does your youngest daughter live?
Very good, very good. Where does your youngest daughter live? Or you could say, where does Hei Jin live?
Yes.
Where does Hei Jin live, or where does your youngest daughter live? Very good. Where does your youngest daughter live? My youngest daughter, Hei Jin, lives in San Diego. Number 6, the answer says Mr. and Mrs. Shu keep in touch with their son by phone. They want you to ask a question about by phone. So what are we going to ask?
How
Yes,
how do Mr. and Mrs. Shu
yes. How do Mr. and Mrs. Shu?
keep in touch with their son?
Very good. How do Mr. and Mrs. Shu keep in touch with their son? They keep in touch with their son by phone. So how do Mr. and Mrs. Shu keep in touch with their son? Mr. and Mrs. Shu keep in touch with their son by phone. Now they want you to answer these same questions for your own family. So if I were to ask you, where does your family live?
My family live in Egypt,
In
Cairo.
Cairo, in Cairo. Very good. And number 2, um, when does your father work?
Uh, he he
Your
work
father.
yeah he works at morning in morning
In the morning. Your father
in the
works
morning.
in the morning. Your father works in the morning. My father works in the
My father.
morning.
Mhm.
And how many cousins do you have?
I have 10 cousins.
Okay, I have 10 cousins. Um, how often do you messenger your family? How often do you messenger your family?
I messenger my family every day.
Every day?
Yes.
Very good. I messenger my family every day. And number 5, thank you. Number 5, where does your sister live?
My sister lives in Cairo.
Very good. My sister lives in Cairo. And number 6, how do you keep in touch with your family?
Um, I keep in touch with my family by phone.
Very good. Very good. Okay, let's Let's go to the review in your big book. In your big book on page 43 is the unit review. And this is going to review everything we've done in unit 2, okay?
Yes. Okay.
So let's start at the beginning. Complete the questions. Use do or does and the words in parentheses. So they're giving you information in this chart about these different people: Nioro, Gina, Hector, Rahim, and Nu. And it
Mhm.
tells you where they work, their place of work, the number of children they have, and their place of residence. So we're
Mhm.
going to ask questions about these people in this table.
Okay.
So the first one is, do Nioro and Rahim have children? So you have to look at the number of children. Nioro has 1,
Yes.
and
And Rahim has three.
Rahim Rahim has 3. So do Nioro and Rahim have children? How would you answer that?
Yes, they do.
Very good. Yes, they do. Number 2 is where, and we're asking about Nioro.
Mhm.
And we're going to say, where does Nioro work? So you're going to look at the table and say place of work. Where does Nioro work? Nioro works
Works in hospital.
at
At
a
hospital.
hospital.
Yes.
Nioro works at a hospital. It would not be wrong to say in a hospital, but the chart tells you to use at a
At.
hospital.
Yes.
So his place of work is at a hospital.
Yes.
Where does Nioro work? He works at a hospital.
Yeah.
Number 3, we're going to talk about Nioro and Nu. You want to try that one?
Yes. Uh, Junior and you live with their in
Very good. In-laws. Do Nioro and Nu live with their in-laws? So we're going to look at Nioro and Nu and where they live, place of residence. Nioro says in-laws house and Nu says in-laws house. So where do Nioro and Nu live with their in-laws? What's the answer?
Yes, they do.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. They both live with their in-laws. Yes, they do. Number 4. We're going to try number 4.
Mm-hmm. Uh, does Hector have children?
That's the right question. Does Hector have children? That's the correct question. What's the answer?
No, he doesn't.
Very good. No, he doesn't. So does Hector have children? No, he doesn't. Number 5.
Um, where does Gina live?
Very good. Where does Gina live? Where does she live?
She lives in rented apartment.
She lives in an apartment. You don't have to say rented, but
Okay.
she lives in an apartment. Where does Gina live? She lives in an apartment. It's not wrong to say a rented apartment because that's what they put in the table.
Yeah.
You don't have to say rented. Usually if someone lives in an apartment, they're renting.
Okay.
If somebody owns an apartment, if they live in an apartment that they own, they usually call it a condominium. It's a different word
Yeah.
because that means they own it rather than rent it. So a
Okay.
rented apartment, most apartments are rented.
Okay.
So number 6, how many children?
Does Rahim have?
Very good. How many children does Rahim have? How many children does Rahim have?
He
So look
has
at,
three
very good. He has 3 children.
children.
Rahim has 3 children. How many children does Rahim have? He has 3 children. And number 7, Nu and Rahim,
Where do you and Rahim work?
right?
They work in an office.
Very good. They work in an office. Where do Nu and Rahim work? They work in an office. Where do Nu and Rahim work? They work in an office. And we already did the second part because the second part was to do the answers for all of those questions. And we did them as we went through there. So we've already done that. In the next part, it says complete the sentences. Use the information in the chart and the words in the box. So they've given you words in the box: do to, does to, don't either, and doesn't either. And they
Yeah.
want you to use those in this next part. So Nioro works at a hospital, and we're still using these pictures and this table at the top of the page.
Yes.
So Nioro works at a hospital, and Gina and Hector,
Due to.
very good. And Gina and Hector do too. So when you look at the top, Nioro works at a hospital. So you find Nioro, he works at a hospital, and Gina works at a hospital, and Hector works at a hospital. So Nioro works at a hospital, and Gina and Hector do too. Very good. So the next one is Nioro has children. So we're going to look at Nioro. He has a child. And what about Rahim?
Uh, and Rahim does too.
Very good. Nioro has children, and Rahim does too. Nioro has children, and Rahim does too. And number 3,
Gianna doesn't work in an office, and Hector doesn't either.
very good. Gina doesn't work in an office, and Hector doesn't either. Gina works at a hospital, and Hector works at a hospital. So Gina does not work in an office, and Hector doesn't either. Hector doesn't either. Number 4, New doesn't live in an apartment, and Nioro and Rahim,
Don't either.
very good. And Nioro and Rahim don't either. Very good. Nioro and Rahim don't either. I usually don't do these next parts because it's very difficult to act things out, especially on Zoom. But you can go over those and review how you would do those if you were in a group. But it's very difficult to do those with just one-on-one on Zoom. So you can review that last page, page 44. But that will end Unit 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to stop there, and we'll start with Unit 3 next week.
Okay.
So next week we'll start a new unit,
Okay.
Unit 3. And that concludes Unit 2. Do you have any questions for me, Christine?
No, ma'am, thank you.
Very good. And if you think of things that you want to ask and you think you may not remember them, you can write them down, make yourself a note, and you can ask me. I always want to answer your questions that you have. You may think of things over the course of a week. I wish I could ask Miss Elsa that.
Yeah,
So if
okay.
you have a question, just make a note,
Thank
and you
you.
can ask me at our next class.
Thank
Okay?
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Christine. I look forward to seeing you next week.
Okay, thank you so much. Have
Take
a good
care.
day. Bye.
You have a great week. Yes, you have a great week.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.